Joining me now, Democrat from Illinois and member of both the House Intelligence and Oversight Committees, Congressman Roger Krishnamoorthi. Congressman, good to see you again. Thank you for joining me. I worry about this because intelligence and the efficacy of the intelligence community is not something Americans think about all the time, right? We think about it when there's a failure of intelligence. We think about it when we're under attack in some fashion. But it is really an area that we don't want to see politicized. We don't want to see the heads of these agencies being people who will carry the president's water.
That's exactly right. The intelligence community basically protects our national security. And as you mentioned before, they largely serve in silence. Their actions are not publicized and their victories aren't publicized, but they serve in silence. The key thing is that the way in which they assess national security threats and then defeat these national security threats should not be biased in any way by politics. Director Coates and Deputy Director Gordon were people who conducted themselves in that way, and on occasion, Director Coates in particular clashed with Donald Trump with regard to the assessment of whether, for instance, Russia was still a threat, or his views about North Korea, or even man-made climate change. And so in removing Director Coates and now Deputy Director Gordon, it appears to be a purge of dissenters within the intelligence community, which is dangerous for our national security.
I want to ask you about guns. We had heard some comments by Mitch McConnell on a radio station earlier today. Now an aide of his seems to be ensuring that no one is under the impression that Mitch McConnell is actually really looking to get too involved in background checks. But assuming there is some space for discussion, because there are 5 Republican senators who are on the record as calling for background check legislation. I'll show them to our viewers now. Assuming there's some space for discussion, what are you willing to compromise in order to get some meaningful legislation?
Well, as you know, we passed H.R. 8 out of the House on a big vote, went to the Senate, and I believe that they should take up H.R. 8 immediately. In terms of compromises, we really have to see what they want to do with H.R. 8. I think it's very reasonable legislation. I know that he keeps focusing on deranged people and mentally deranged people not having handguns. However, there are other classes of reforms that have to be addressed, such as closing the no-fly loophole, where we ban terrorists from flying on airplanes, but we allow them to buy handguns, or closing the internet or gun show loopholes, or preventing white supremacists from getting a handgun, and so forth. So these are the types of issues that we need to discuss as well.
Do you think, a number of people, we've heard from gun safety activists who have said, they were successful in the 2018 election in getting a lot of gun safety, gun sense candidates elected. They were actually able to outspend the NRA. And that some things have happened, including a lot of these states that have red flag laws now. What's your sense of the motivation at this point? Because there are many people who think, if it didn't change after Sandy Hook, if we didn't see national legislation after Parkland, what about these shootings changes anything?
I think that perhaps the sheer volume of the mass shootings that have happened in this year alone may start to change the conversation. But I think that we should approach this with a little bit of skepticism. I think that we have to hold their feet to the fire, especially Mitch McConnell at this point, because although he's made certain statements, today he walked back a little bit of what he said before. With regard to Donald Trump, again, we have to see actions, not just words. And so I hope that we have concrete discussions about how do we bring H.R. 8 up for a vote. If they want to amend it, we can talk about it. But now is the time to act. It's not. I think people are sick and tired of the words and the thoughts and prayers.
Congressman, good to talk to you as always. Thank you, Congressman Roger Krishnamoorthi.
Thank you, Ali.
Of Illinois.